Good afternoon. My name is Helen Miller and I'm Assistant Governance Relations at GRI. Welcome to this meeting of the Global Sustainability Standards Board, known by its acronym, the GSSB, held on 19th of July 2017. This virtual meeting is being hosted from the GRI Secretariat Office in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Please note that all public GSSB meetings are being recorded, and you can find the audio recording on the GSSB webpage along with high-level summaries of previous GSSB meetings. Present from the GRI Secretariat today are Bastian Buck, Director Standards Division, Chelsea Reinhardt, Deputy Director Standards Division, Laura Espinach, Manager Standards, and Pamela Carpio, Senior Coordinator Governance Relations. We will now start with a roll call. Daniel Thailand.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute and couldn't find the button, but I'm here.
Thank you. Dwight Justice.
Yes, I'm here.
Evan Harvey.
I'm here, present.
Judy Kusevsky.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Julia Wilson.
Present, thank you.
Jürgen Buxbaum.
Thank you, I'm present.
Ken Swift.
Yes, I'm here.
Kirsten Magrede-Hovey.
Yes, present.
Michelle Wascher.
Present.
Nankumar Vadakepat. Nankumar Vadakepat, are you on the line? Robin Leeson.
Yes, present.
Stian Vandrach.
Good afternoon.
Sulema Pioli.
Hello, I'm here.
And I'll try again, Nankumar Vadakepat. Okay, thank you everyone. We would like to note that GSSB member Mr. Daniel Ingram sent his apologies to this meeting. I'll now hand to the chair, Judy Kusevsky, to open the meeting.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you happen to be, and greetings also to the Secretariat, the Standards Division team, and to, excuse me, to all of our supporters and stakeholders who may be listening online. Thank you very much for making the time once again for this regular meeting of the GSSB. We do have a number of items to get through today, which are quite important for our agenda and our timeline. So we'll try to move through them as swiftly as we possibly can. We have in front of us our agenda here today. So unless there are any comments or questions about the agenda, I will assume that this is fine with everyone. Are there any, do I hear any comments or questions on the agenda today? Okay, thank you very much. I will note that we do have a quorum for this meeting, but it is it's not a large quorum, and so in order to make sure that we can get through the agenda that we need to today, it is quite important to maintain quorum throughout. So if members would kindly make sure that they stay online for the duration of the call, that would be very much appreciated. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the approval of the most recent meeting summary. Do we have any discussion of this document? Okay, hearing none, I will assume that this is acceptable to everyone, and it is taken as accepted by the GSSB members. I note that there are issues with the sound on one or two people's access to the online meeting. So I know that those are being addressed at the moment. Can we move on to our next agenda item, please, which I'm going to turn over to Chelsea, I believe, yes?
Hi, Judy. I think Bastian wanted to give just a very short intro ahead of the discussion on water and OHS.
Yes, please do.
Yes, and this is Bastian. I will keep it very succinct. So I wanted to just remind GSB members on the process that has gotten us into the situation that we're in now, the approval moment for a public comment draft. So there were multiple touch points with the contents for water and OH&S for you through the GSB sponsors to the specific projects, as well as the framing of the project scope, the nominations for the committees, as well as the different updates, and most recently the call that we had in June, where we updated you about the specifics of the drafting and well, probably the comprehensive draft of the recommendations. Your feedback has been vetted with the experts on the working groups, and except for the feedback that we've received just in the last days, we have always circled back to you to inform you about the outcomes of the discussions with the working group. We are now at a moment where we have the recommendations of the working group in front of us, and we are asking for approval to put these recommendations for public comment. And I'm saying that to emphasize that what we're looking for at this stage is, next to the approval, any critical issues that you would like to flag that remain and that need to be resolved before this document or these documents can go for a public comment. And specifically, since there was ample opportunity to review the contents, we are now looking not so much for changes to the actual document. We are first and foremost looking for suggestions that you might have on things that should be checked during the public comment by means of additional questions in the questionnaire that goes with the public comment draft. So we have the opportunity to check particular disclosures, elements of disclosures, guidance text with the stakeholders in the sense of asking follow-up questions, whether we have the right scope, the right issue addressed and pinpointed it in the right way. But what we're trying to avoid today, to the extent possible, is to wordsmith the recommendations. In case we receive suggestions for further wording changes, we propose to go back to the experts actually and consult them on the subject matter. And that's simply for the fact that as you know, here in the Secretariat, while the team has built up quite some expertise in the different issue areas, we are not quite comfortable to make judgment calls around specific changes. So we will go back with suggestions that we are hearing today regarding changes of the actual document to the working group, and then hope that we can approve the documents today, with the caveat that this is still pending, that there is a conversation with the working group still pending. We will, of course, update you about the conversations and will also inform you about the outcome. That could take two forms. One is changes to the recommendations before they're released, or, as I said earlier, an additional question that actually alludes to the issue that has been raised as part of the questionnaire, with a strong preference for the latter at this stage from our end. With that, I would like to hand back to Chelsea, who will introduce the water-related exposure draft.
Thank you, Bastian. And I'm covering this content area this month. Anna is on annual leave, but she will be back with you in September, representing any updates on the project from then forward. So first, I just want to share a quick overview of some of the feedback that we received from the GSSB. Bear with me just a moment while I get our place back. We'll go through a summary of the recent changes made. We'll discuss any comments that we received ahead of time from the GSSB. We'll have a short opportunity for anyone to raise any additional questions, comments, or concerns, and then we will hopefully move into an approval vote for the exposure draft. So we made a number of changes since the 29th of June call in response to both comments made from the GSSB as well as the final round of project working group feedback that we collected at the end of June. We introduced a new management approach requirement specifically covering agricultural runoff. We added in a reference to the UN resolution on water as a human right. We brought in additional guidance on how to calculate water consumption, plus a recommendation to explain how that consumption has been calculated, with the intent that that would capture any of these sort of extraordinary circumstances where a company, for example, is withdrawing water and discharging it to a nearby destination. We also made changes to update the guidance tables in order to better align with the reporting requirements. And we slightly simplified the destinations for water discharge in order to align with the sources. So now in the guidance tables, it's possible actually to track the sort of overall water flow from withdrawal to consumption to discharge by source. We also made a change based on project working group feedback to require discharges to be reported by either level of treatment or quality. And that is something that we will be focusing on specifically during the consultation process, because we had extensive debates with the working group around whether or not level of treatment or quality is the right breakdown to use for discharges. We also added an additional requirement around how the organization has identified a threshold for reporting significant spills and leaks, and that was done in response to GSSB comments made during and after the call on the 29th of June. And we also made minor changes to the definition of water discharge based on comments from the working group. We received several comments from GSSB members in the lead up to this call, and a couple of points coming in actually just this morning, which will require some further discussion with the GSSB. The first, and this was also covered in the paper, item 02, was a question on whether or not we should include additional metrics for companies who have significant water impacts in the supply chain, but aren't going to be able to report specific water consumption or withdrawal data for their suppliers. So the example given was companies that have lots of very small suppliers. It's very infeasible for them to collect data across their suppliers, but at the same time there is a concern that if we rely only on a narrative reporting, we could have very light information provided on what their impacts are and how they manage that. So what we are proposing, and we've discussed this with the GSSB member who raised the comment, is to bring in a specific consultation question in the questionnaire, which would ask for organizations that cannot report water consumption or withdrawal for their suppliers, as recommended in the standard, do you suggest additional disclosures that could help to communicate about their supply chain impacts, particularly in areas of water stress? And that would look to get at whether or not organizations think that some of these other alternate metrics that the working group discussed and decided against, such as looking at the percentage of suppliers in water-stressed areas or percentage of production in water-stressed areas, actually do have value for reporting organizations or users of this information, or in fact, if there might be disclosures out there that we haven't considered that we should bring in to capture this kind of area of companies. So that's our proposed solution for this one. We would propose to keep the draft as is, since this point had been discussed quite a bit by the working group. We had two further comments made by another GSSB member. The first was an observation that reporting in megaliters, which is currently required throughout the standard, may not work for all companies, and the comment made was that, for example, companies might find that numbers with too many zeros are very difficult for users of the report to easily understand and identify. So this point was discussed again by the working group explicitly, and they were quite clear that they would like to keep the comparable unit of megaliters, in part to promote comparability of the data, but also to align with other reporting frameworks such as CDP. So our proposal is to keep the draft as is, because it is always easier for us, based on feedback during the public comment period, to make that more flexible. So for example, to make it a recommendation rather than a requirement to report in megaliters, than to change it the other way around after the comment period. The last point, which is possibly where we might need to spend a bit of discussion time, is around a comment from a GSSB member around including being more specific. Right now we require total water consumption in all areas and then in water stressed areas. And the point made, which is probably not captured exactly correctly in this bullet point, was that her request is to have that separated out and to focus on either only freshwater consumption or freshwater and seawater consumption separately. So that's potentially a slightly more major clarification that would require going back to the working group. Our discussion with the working group to date has indicated that although we require withdrawals of water by source, we don't actually require water consumption to be broken down by source. So right now, based on the definition of water consumption and the guidance provided, companies would actually be looking at their total water consumption, including both freshwater and potentially brackish or seawater sources altogether. So I would maybe turn it over to you, Judy, or to GSSB members to expand on any of those points or to raise any additional comments or questions at this point in the discussion.
Chelsea, there is a comment from Nankumar in the conversation box. I don't know if you can see.
Sure. So Nankumar raised another comment that we could include suppliers in water-stressed areas if water is material for this supplier. Okay, so Judy, I will give it back to you to see if there's any additional comments or feedback that GSSB members want to raise, and otherwise I would ask maybe Kirsten to expand a bit on the comment and the concern that she has.
Yes, thank you. That is absolutely fine. Can I ask if there are any other GSSB members who have questions or comments on the draft document? Hearing none, there is only just that one comment from Nankumar in the comment function of the online meeting. So I think, Chelsea, that for the most part we have consensus, or at least a lack of questions on this document. So please do go ahead and, as you planned, perhaps to open it up, just explore this issue a little bit further and make sure that we are on the same page about it.
Sure. Kirsten, do you want to speak a little bit more to your concern for the sake of the group, to make sure that I've captured that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have captured it quite correctly. First, I'll just take the small thing about requiring water withdrawal, etc., to be reported in megaliters. I think I find that very rigid. It's a concern when we're filling in the CDP questionnaire, because with putting in, as you said, too many zeros, the numbers become very difficult to read. And one thing is that CDP is rigid. I don't see the same need for doing that for GRI standards. What should, of course, be very clear is that the unit used should be clearly stated. For me, in addition, I do believe that megaliters doesn't really say very much to most people. Even as an engineer, I needed to look it up. How many megaliters correspond to a million cubic meters or 1 cubic meter. It's actually 1,000 cubic meters. But for sending it out on the public hearing, I have no big problems in using megaliters. But just having it in mind that by doing it too rigid, we are at risk of finding something that doesn't suit a large part of our users. For the second question, is there somebody that could mute their microphone in the back?
I think that may be Dwight on his other call.
Okay. When it comes to the guidance table on line 371, I have no problems in what is written in the requirement as such. But when I see it in the table, I find it a bit problematic that we all recommend the reporting organization to report on freshwater and seawater combined, which for me is seems to be a bit odd thing to do, because seawater and freshwater, especially in water restricted areas, are two very different things.
I don't think that the revision of
thank you. That was what I just wanted to add. So it's, and just to the emphasis, it's only the guidance table I suggest to make changes to, not the reporting requirements as such. Thank you.
So just to, Judy, any other comments, or should I respond there to Kirsten's point?
Why don't we see if there are any other members who'd like to raise their hand or to offer a comment on this or any other issues, and then if there are none in a moment, then please go ahead and respond.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any, and I'm not hearing any. So if perhaps yes, if you could go ahead and do that, that would be helpful.
Sure. So I think I think it's actually going to be quite challenging to change just the guidance table, because the guidance table is intended to reflect the requirements. And right now, when we require total water consumption from water-stressed areas and from all areas, which is in Disclosure 3031 on page 10 of the item 02, based on the definition of water consumption, which was discussed at length with the GSSB and the project working group, we actually do include all sources of water in that definition. So it would require to, in order to be explicit that what we're looking for is a breakdown between freshwater consumption and seawater consumption or brackish consumption, we would actually need to go in and adjust at least the definition and also the guidance around calculating water consumption. So I think it's very much a valid point that Kirsten's raising. I don't have the expertise to know. We did have significant discussions with the working group around the definitions, and I know we are aligned with other frameworks and important sort of water management sources around our definition of consumption. I think there's two choices here, or two options that I can see. The first is that we go ahead and we make the change that Kirsten is suggesting, which would require us to go back to the working group for their overall consent, and that would mean adjusting the definition of consumption to focus on only fresh water, then making that explicit in the guidance around that reporting requirement and in the guidance around compiling water consumption. We could also then have a recommendation that organizations could report their seawater consumption separately. Or what we could do, but it's not going to be possible, I think, just to update the guidance table without changing the corresponding requirements. So that's one option. The second option is that we could leave the draft as it is, but we could introduce a specific consultation question asking organizations whether or not it is either feasible or more valuable to report on their consumption broken down by freshwater versus seawater. I think those are probably the two options I can identify, although I'm certainly happy to look at other suggestions from the GSSB.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. I think just in my own view, we're not here to second guess the expertise of the working group members, so I'd be quite uncomfortable with our just simply making a change without going back to them. So I think this is the choice that we have to make here. If we do propose a change that needs to go back to the working group, Chelsea, can you just remind the standards board of the timing implications of all of this? Because I think we're at the stage now of needing to proceed with approval for the public comment process, and we'll need to do this again if we need to go back to the working group at this point. Can you tell us what the implications might be?
Yeah, I don't think we've actually ever been down exactly this road before, but what I would propose is that we ask the GSSB then, if we are looking to go back to the working group to propose making a change, that we ask the GSSB to approve the draft as it is, subject to final clarification on that point to be guided by the feedback from the project working group. That would be, I think, our proposal. Otherwise, we could potentially end up in a continuing cycle of working group and GSSB feedback.
Right, and if the GSSB were to provisionally approve the document pending that clarification, and the clarification comes back one way or another, does it then follow from that it will be ready to be launched? I'm not quite sure. Does it not depend on what the nature of that clarification is, whether or not this is then ready to go, or can you possibly clarify that?
Yeah, Bastian, feel free to jump in. This is not outlined clearly in the due process. My understanding would be that basically the GSSB would approve the draft subject to deferring to the project working group's final expertise on whether or not we require the breakdown by freshwater and seawater for consumption, or whether we leave as is for the comment period. We are also getting a number of comments through on the chat window, Judy, and I don't know if you.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I'll go to those to share those publicly in a moment. If we just come to the end of this particular issue first.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Bastian. So just to reconfirm, I think Chelsea's explanation of how the process could look like is correct, and this is how we've handled it in the past. So it could be approved by you today, subject to a specified course of action in the coming days.
Okay, so we have in the chat function, we have a comment from Michel Washer supporting Kirsten's concerns around units. Megaliters is certainly not the best choice. Cubic meter seems more logical if we really need to set it. And secondly, it should be possible to calculate sweetwater consumption separately from seawater consumption. And Nan Kumar has expressed an opinion that we could report freshwater and seawater separately. However, we can wait for public comment, which is something that Michel Washer agrees with, that we can wait for public comment on that matter, and this has been supported by Kent Swift as well. So I guess I will put it back to the GSSB now to determine whether or not we have reached a point where this topic, this issue specifically, needs to go back to the working group members for their feedback and clarification, or if members are happy for this this discussion to have been recorded and noted, and the public comment period can take care of this matter. Now I do have another comment from Sulema saying that she agrees with waiting for the public comment on the matter. And Nan Kumar says, I do not think so, but I'm not quite sure what that refers to. Nan Kumar, does that mean that you do not wish to wait for the public comment, or you do? I'm not quite sure what you are responding to. And Attila is, right, okay. Nan Kumar says that we should go back to the working group. And Attila says that he's supporting public comment. And I think Nan Kumar has now clarified his comments not to go back to the working group. Good, thank you. And if I'm not getting that right, please everyone let me know. But I believe the comments that are coming through right now are in support of putting this out for public comment and taking note of this particular issue in the discussion. Now, Michel, you would like to raise a comment. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, it's very fast in my opinion, and I believe other members of the GSSB share it. The document is certainly good enough for public consultation.
Thank you very much. And there are other expressions of support along these lines being shared by Evan Harvey and Sian van Draag on the chat function. Chelsea, can we go back to the suggestion that you made to add a specific consultation question to the consultation document on release with this issue? Is that something that we should explicitly do, or simply see what comes out in the public comment?
I think that's a little bit dependent on what the GSSB would like to see, but we certainly can add a question in focusing specifically on whether or not respondents think it is valuable and feasible to report consumption broken down by freshwater and seawater. And I think that won't hurt in terms of the feedback that we'll get. It will be more pointed than just leaving it open to consultation, which requires people to really think about each point as they go through the document.
Okay, thank you. Kirsten, please go ahead.
Thank you. The most important part for me is that we make it clear in the consultation that these are still up or should be questions to be considered. Because, as I've already said, it's the first is about the usability of the standard, and the second point is about the relevance of the standard. But as long as they are clearly stated in the public consultation, I'm fine. Thank you.
Chelsea, is that workable from the standards division perspective?
Yeah, that's fine. I think, you know, I would thank Kirsten for raising these points. I think they're very valuable and probably quite correct points. It's just hard for us to be speaking on behalf of the working group at this point in the process. So I think it is certainly possible for us to make sure that that is particularly consulted on the second point, and then we will be able to bring back not only a subsequent discussion with the project working group after the consultation, but that discussion to be informed by specific feedback from participants in the comment period.
Great. Okay, so in the absence of any further hands being raised or topics or issues that members would like to discuss at this point, I think we're moving towards a consensus on this. I think what I'm hearing is that members are happy for this document to be exposed for public comment with these this discussion that we have just noted, including a specific exploration of this particular issue that Kirsten has raised in the consultation document so that we can get some specific feedback on it. So I put it to the standards board. Does the GSSB approve the exposure draft of GRI 303 subject to today's discussion? There are no changes as such that we are proposing to make to the discussion, to the exposure draft, but there is some clarification that we would specifically like to seek during the consultation period. Does the GSSB approve this for public exposure?
You know, the drafting committees and this and that.
We do have some expressions of approval going through on the chat function, and hearing no objections or concerns raised at this point, I will take this as approval from the GSSB. Thank you very much to everyone for your attention to this and for your participation.
Excuse me, Judy, this is Pamela from the
Perhaps if you add the word balance with the same
yes, please,
stakeholder engagement and
yes.
balance.
So in order to approve the draft for public exposure, we need to have a total of 12 votes in favor. So if I can kindly suggest that we actually get that number of votes.
Yes, thank you for correcting my process here. So please, can we call the vote at this point? If someone would like to make a motion in favor of approving the exposure draft of GRI 303, that would be the first step.
This is Daniel. I do motion to approve the draft.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Do I hear a second?
This is Julia. Second that.
Thank you. We've got a second. Pamela, can you please call the roll call for the vote, please?
Yes. So Kirsten, Please note before you vote, I have muted some of the participants because of background noise. If you are using the telephone, please use *6 to unmute yourself, and otherwise, if you're using the Skype, you can use the blue icon with a microphone on it and unmute yourself. So I'm going to proceed to roll call. Kirsten Margret Hovey. Perhaps you have to use *6 to unmute yourself. We'll come back to you a little bit later. Sulema Pioli.
Hello, I'm supporting the public exposure of the draft as it stands.
Thank you. Jürgen Buxbaum. It could be that you are muted, Jürgen. You can use *6. We'll come back a little bit later to you. Michelle Washer.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Ken Swift.
Yes, I support it.
Thank you. Stian van Draag. Stian, if you are muted, you can perhaps press the blue icon, the blue microphone icon on your Skype for Business pop-up. It is for the Secretariat impossible to unmute people that are on the line. People that are using the telephone line have to unmute themselves independently by pressing *6. Robin Leeson.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Judy Kuzewski.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Danielle Taillon.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Nan Kumar.
I am in favor. I am in favor. Thank you.
Dwight Justice.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Evan Harvey. We'll come back to Evan. Perhaps you are muted. Attila Yerlikaya.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. And Julia Wilson.
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. So I'll come back to Kirsten to see if we can now hear your vote.
Yeah, I'm not able to. Well, I approve it. But
Thank you
now
very
I'm
much.
not able to unmute by press 6, but then I lose half of what you're saying.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for casting your vote at the moment. Perhaps we can go back to Jürgen Buxbaum by pressing *6, Jürgen, on your telephone line.
What you're dealing with is categories and the balance between the categories in the procedure, you see. So
Stian van Draag.
For stakeholder engagement and balance. It's more accurate.
Stian has let me know that he fell off the line and he is reconnecting.
Okay. And then perhaps you can try again, Evan Harvey. We have 11 votes at the moment.
Well, I would say that.
Yes. Can you hear me now? I do approve.
Thank you very much. We have 12 votes in favor.
Thanth you, everyone. We'll record those final votes when we have.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Jürgen.
I just confirm that I approve the draft.
Thank you very much. So we have a full quorum to pass this. So that means that this particular item on the agenda is now done. Thank you all very much for your attention to that. Can I now pass it over back to the Standards Division to help us discuss the GRI Draft 403, Occupational Health and Safety, and I believe the same discussion comment applies to this document as to the water document, which is that we are obviously at the moment of needing to approve the draft for public comment. So Bastian's advice applies equally to this one as well. Laura, Are you prepared to talk us through this?
Yes, I am, Judy. So next is the draft of GRI 403, and that is item 03 from your meeting papers. As with water, the objectives of this session are to present the most recent changes to the draft that we have made in response to GSSB and working group feedback. We'll share the GSSB comments that we have received ahead of this call, and then we will open up for any further comments, questions, or concerns from the GSSB. And finally, we will seek to approve the exposure draft of GRI 403, subject to any changes discussed today. So first, a quick summary of recent changes that we have made to the draft. You can find the full overview on pages 2 and 3 of item 03. And this is a summary of changes that we have made since the last GSSB meeting on the 29th of June. Among the changes that we have made, we have taken out the requirement to report the number of hours worked from disclosure 4033 on work-related illnesses, and that is based on feedback that the rate of illnesses will not be meaningful due to the long latency of illnesses and the time that it takes from exposure to a hazard and the onset of the illnesses, and thus that information would not be needed. With regards to disclosure 4035 on worker health promotion, we have implemented the two changes that we discussed with you at the last meeting, which are to clarify that this disclosure concerns non-work related health risks. So points A and B in this disclosure have been clarified accordingly. And also within guidance, we have clarified that this program should not become criteria for promotion, compensation, or other favorable treatment towards workers. Following GSSB advice, we have developed a new definition of formal joint management worker health and safety committees, and you can find that definition in the glossary section at the back of the draft on page 23. And finally, we have included several references to the SDGs all throughout the standard to indicate how the different contents that we have developed relate to the different sustainable development goals. We have received comments from one GSSB member ahead of today's call, and those comments relate to incorporating the concept of hierarchy of controls more clearly in the draft. This GSSB member raised that the hierarchy of control measures was not clear, and the fact that eliminating hazards should be the priority was not clear in the draft. This was indeed the intent of the project working group to use the concept of hierarchy of controls, which is in line with the ILO and the ISO, but the emphasis on eliminating hazards first was perhaps weakened in the final drafting. So to address this comment, there are a total of 5 changes being proposed to the draft. The first 2 changes are in the management approach section. Clause 1.2.3 will be revised to require companies to describe the processes used to apply the hierarchy of controls, and that will be instead of reporting the measures implemented to eliminate or control the hazards, which did not make clear that the priority should be to eliminate the hazards. And then new guidance will be added to lines 304 and 305 to clarify the importance of the hierarchy of controls. And the guidance reads as follows. The hierarchy of controls seeks to protect workers by ranking the ways in which hazards can be controlled. Each control is considered less effective than the one before it. The priority is to eliminate the hazard, which is the most effective way to control it. Then letter D in disclosure 403.2 on work-related injuries will include a reference to the hierarchy of controls. And now companies will be required to report on action taken using the hierarchy of controls in response to severe injuries and high potential incidents. And then letter E within disclosure 4032 and letter C within disclosure 4033 on safety and health hazards respectively will include a new requirement asking companies to report on action taken to address those hazards using the hierarchy of controls. So those are the only changes that have been proposed ahead of this call. So now I will turn it over to you, Judy, to solicit any comments from the GSSB on these changes or any other sections of the draft.
Thank you, Laura. Further to the previous discussion of the water document, do any of these changes present a problem in terms of the need to go back to the working group for clarification or for response? Or are they, in the view of the standards division, of a different nature?
So Judy, from our perspective, we wouldn't need to go back to the working group, since this is very much the intent of the working group and the discussions that took place over the last few months. But we will nevertheless share these edits with the working group after this call. But from our perspective, we wouldn't need to go back and discuss these changes again with the working group.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. All right, so I will open it to the GSSB members to raise any discussion, questions, or comments. Would anyone care to raise a hand or to make a comment at this point? Hearing none, I think, Laura, that indicates that the GSSB is broadly in agreement with the document and with these proposed edits. We'll give it one more moment, and I would like to welcome back Stian van Draag online, and perhaps shortly, Helen, we'll go back and make sure that we record the final voice votes if those are necessary to do at this point with respect to the previous document. If they're not necessary, then we won't need to do it. But anyway, are there any other comments or questions before we then bring this to a discussion of the vote? Okay, hearing none. I would then like to look for a motion for the GSSB approval of the exposure draft of GRI 403, subject to the changes that we have discussed today. Do I hear a motion in favor?
It's Stian. You do have a motion.
Thank you, Stian. Can I have a second?
This is Dwight. I second.
Thank you, Dwight. And Helen or Pamela, I would like to ask you to please record the voice vote.
Thank you, Judy. So we'll proceed with a roll call. Kirsten Margret Ovi. We cannot hear you, but you sent by email or by chat that you are in agreement. Sulema Pioli.
I approve it. Can you hear me now?
Thank you, Kirsten. Yes, thank you very much. Sulema Pioli.
I just support the exposure drafted with the amendments proposed.
Thank you. Jürgen Buxbaum.
I approve the draft as it stands.
Thank you very much. Michel Washer.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Ken Swift.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Stian van Draag.
I do approve for exposure.
Thank you. Robin Leeson.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you very much. Judy Kuzewski.
I approve.
Thank you. Daniel Tayan.
I approve.
Thank you. Nankumar Vadekapat. Perhaps you are muted. I will come back to you in a bit. Dwight Justice.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Attila Yarlikaya.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Evan Harvey.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Julia Wilson.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. I'm going back now to Nankumar Vadikapat in case you can unmute yourself, and of course if you can hear
I
us.
think that's extremely important because I remember it took us years on some of those definitions.
Okay, Judy, we have 13 votes in favor.
In the one on stakeholders,
Thank you very much for that. The motion is carried, and this document is approved for public exposure. Thank you to everyone for all of your work, and I think on behalf of the GSSB, I would also like to express our thanks to the working group members, both for this document, GRI 403, and the previous one as well. So thank you very much to the to the GSSB. Can we move on to our next discussion item on the agenda here? This has to do with the tax-related technical committee. And I believe Bastian would like to make a comment to open us up. Can I please, just for the public record and for the benefit of the participants, let everyone know that at the top of the hour, I will be passing over the chairing of this call to our vice chair, Robin Leeson, and I will be dialing back in as a participant myself. So I will advise when that is happening. But just so that it isn't too disruptive, I wanted everyone to know that now. Bastian, would you like to start us off on this?
Yes, and we have for you now as a next item the discussion and approval of the membership of the Technical Committee for Tax. I just want to, before we go into that subject matter, mention that currently we are faced with staffing challenges here at the Standards Division. Next to Chelsea's departure, we have one colleague, additional colleague leaving GRI and another full-time equivalent, another colleague on sick leave at the moment. And this does not enable us to project a timeline for this specific project as of now, in terms of when we will be able to actually start the project. We hope to be in a better position at the upcoming meeting in September, so that until then we have actually sorted through the projections, also have a better view on when we can expect to have additional colleagues added to the team again. And that will enable us to take a decision regarding a start date for that project. But that doesn't stop us from putting this membership forward and improving it. It will enable us to start the process immediately when we have staffing available.
Thank you, Bastian. So just for clarity, we will still go ahead and discuss this document, discuss the proposed membership, hopefully approve it. We are unable to commit to a specific project timeline at the moment, but this will be ready and waiting to go when we are able to commit to that timeline. Okay, Chelsea, are we handing it to you to talk us through?
Yes, you are. Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Bastian, for that background.
If I understand what
I will do my best to speak over Dwight on his call here, so bear with me. First, so this refers to item 04, which you received, which sets out the proposed membership for the Technical Committee on Tax. And I think Bastian's point is a good one in that we're looking for the GSSB to approve the proposed membership at this point, even if there is a slight delay in the project start. And I think this is important to recognize because we have built quite a lot of momentum with the experts in this area over the last 4 months or so. And there's been quite a lot of interest and enthusiasm, although also some concern about GRI starting work in this space. So we would like to be able to go back and to confirm to these experts that we are interested in working with them and that we will be confirming the timeline as soon as we are able. So following the GSSB previous discussion where we talked about the proposed viewpoints to be represented in the Tax Technical Committee, we have done our best to bring you a proposed group that has strong tax accounting and reporting expertise. So there is a specific comment made by the GSSB that you really wanted to ensure that we have technical expertise in this technical committee and a good understanding of tax accounting principles. The majority of this group are accountants, and they do represent a very good knowledge of tax accounting and reporting practice. They also bring to the table good knowledge of existing reporting frameworks, including the OECD base erosion and profit shifting and the EITI, the Extractives Industry Transparency Initiative frameworks. And these are important because in the conversations we've had over the last 4 months with companies and with tax experts, there is a general consensus that any work GRI does in this space really should seek to build off of existing reporting frameworks and initiatives. There's very little appetite for GRI to try and introduce anything that's perceived as competing or separate reporting requirements. The GSSB also made a request that we bring in expertise that understands the connection between tax policy and reporting and the broader sustainable development agenda. So one of the original drivers for this project was not only around investor interest in seeing greater transparency on tax policies and taxes paid, but also really that linkage from a civil society perspective to how the tax question relates to how organizations are actually contributing towards local economic development and issues like sustainable development goals around wealth inequality and poverty. So just to remind you, this tax project was decided by the GSSB in March to be run as a separate technical committee work stream, but the longer term vision is very much that these disclosures could potentially be incorporated back into the broader review of the economic standards, which is still on the schedule to be carried out in early 2018. So very much we're looking for that linkage between tax and also broader economic contribution. We have done the best job we could in bringing in a multi-stakeholder composition, even in this relatively smaller technical committee. So we have 2 representatives from mediating institutions, 2 business members, 1 labor candidate, 2 representatives from the investor angle, and 1 civil society representative. And I would just add, in the paper that went out to the GSSB, we noted that 2 candidates had still not yet confirmed their capacity to participate and were seeking internal approval. And both of those candidates have come back to us with the green light that they would like to be considered, and they do have the appropriate internal approvals.
Chelsea, this is
Yes.
Judy. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the time has come, and officially I would like to hand over the chairing to Robin Leeson, our vice chair, I'm going to log off myself, and I will dial back in as a participant in a moment. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for letting us know, Judy. And just one more note on this. As discussed previously with the GSSB, we have deliberately tried to keep the technical committee as small as possible while still representing that breadth of expertise and viewpoints just discussed. But I think that's important to allow the group actually to be able to do this work in a relatively efficient time frame and to have the flexibility to put together recommended disclosures to share back with the GSSB. We are, however, maintaining a longer contact list, which represents a number of other contacts that had been previously suggested by the Stakeholder Council, the GRI Board, or the GSSB, and those issue experts or representatives from other reporting frameworks, we would be seeking to include in a peer review phase or roundtable to be able to socialize and get additional feedback on some of the early draft recommendations coming out of this technical committee. So with that, I would turn it over to Robin to seek any comments or questions from the GSSB around the proposed technical committee membership. Robin, are you on the line? Okay, not hearing Robin. I will go ahead and possibly you're on mute, Robin. I'll let Pamela sort that out.
Robin, can you please press *6 to unmute yourself? I am unable to unmute you on my side.
Hello?
That doesn't sound like Robin.
No, it's Jürgen speaking. I just wanted
Jürgen.
to make a little comment, but let's wait for Robin.
I'm raising my hand as well.
Yes,
Chelsea.
I see that, Salema. Why don't you go ahead, Salema, and Jürgen,
Okay.
you'll be next in the queue while we wait for Robin to come back online. So go ahead, Salema.
Okay.
So I would like to express how much appreciated it's the hard work applied by the Standards Division on the stakeholder diversity matter. However, again, I would like to express concern about the gap on geographical representation. Almost 100% of the working group is from Europe or US, and one person from Australia. I would like to raise and to point out that it would be beneficial to have someone from either from Africa or from Latin America.
Yeah, I will respond to that quickly, and I think we noted this in the paper as well. We don't disagree, Salema, and we did, actively discuss with the Stakeholder Council and with the GSB the desire to bring in expertise from other areas. In this tax project, this is very challenging because we did speak with potential technical committee candidates from Asia and from South Africa, and we did not find the same willingness to consider greater transparency around tax, which is fundamentally what this project is about. So I do think that when you look at the literature and the media attention, the call for greater disclosure around tax right now really is being led by Europe as well as the investor community increasingly in North America. And I would say that the representation of the technical committee does represent that. So I think this is an area where we are not seeking to discriminate geographically at all, but I think we also need to be mindful of the remit of the technical committee here, which is really to bring to the table the best aspirational technical expertise in developing recommended disclosures, which then go over to the GSSB for their consideration, their debate, and potentially exposure to a wider variety of stakeholders during a public comment process.
Oh, Chelsea, thank you very much for this clarification. I'm more comfortable right now, but I would recommend a note when writing down the draft to be exposed, explaining that the requirement is more in mainstream in US and in Europe. Then we can raise interest from Latin America, for instance.
Yep, okay, noted.
Thank you, thank you.
Jürgen?
Sorry, it's
Yes,
Robin. Can you hear me now?
There's Robin. Go ahead, Robin. Please take over.
I apologise for that. I just had a follow-up question. Is it possible that I may have missed something, that the peer review phase or the broader group that of contacts that you have has that broader representation available to it?
It is certainly similar to the approach that we're taking now for water and OHS. So following discussions with the GSSB early on about the challenges with geographic diversity in those working groups, we are now during the public comment period, we will be running specific stakeholder workshops in 2 locations in Latin America, in China, as well as in Africa, to specifically try and target regional perspectives during that comment period. And certainly a similar approach is possible to do.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. Could I just check in with Helen, because I'm actually doing this by phone, if there's anyone who has posed a question through the chat function.
Jürgen had mentioned he had a comment, Robin. No other comments in the chat yet.
I only wanted to say
Thank you.
that I'm really happy with the composition of the technical committee. Chelsea, I guess it was not easy to find such a balanced composition of qualified candidates. And you even managed to have an almost balanced mix of men and women in the committee. Excellent. And another really minor comment. One person supposed to be in the technical committee, his name is Daniel Bertossa. in the paper, he is based in Brussels. This is an error. He's based in France. But this is a minor thing.
A good correction, Jürgen, which I have noted down.
Thank you. If there are any more comments or questions for Chelsea on this paper? No? I'll take that then as a general consensus that we're approving of the technical committee membership, and given the delayed start, that we'll still pursue the technical committee as it's been proposed, with those virtual meetings starting in the fourth quarter of 2017.
So, Robin, just a quick process note on this one. Under due process, actually, we don't need a member-by-member vote. The GSSB just needs to have officially appointed a technical committee. So it is probably fine, Pamela, feel free to correct me, just to ask whether there are any votes of non-support and then to consider it approved.
Okay. So I think there was general consensus, but just a final call to see if there is anybody who does have another question or has an issue with approving this in its final form. Quite. Is anyone checking the chat function for that?
Only
as well?
several comments from Evan, Kirsten, Stian, and Attila to support their approval.
Great. Okay. Good. So I assume that we can move on to the final item. Yes. With that, it would be around the other business and particularly the summary of technical questions to the standards. And I was just wondering if Bastian or Chelsea, you would like to speak to that, if there are any particular questions that have come up in the technical log of inquiries that we should consider at this stage. I know my understanding is we will have more time to review all of this at our face-to-face meeting in September, but it would be helpful perhaps to raise any issues that have come up in recent times.
Sure, Robin, I can speak to that. This is Chelsea. So we have consolidated into item 05, as per standard process with the GSSB, a summary of the technical queries received from June and July. So really a short period. This is since our previous call with the GSSB, which was on 29th June. We haven't identified questions out of this batch of questions that require a specific GSSB action at this point. We did, however, want to highlight one theme which has come up a number of times in recent weeks, which is around how organizations should be reporting using the standards if there are changes in their reporting scope or boundaries, and that's either from disclosure to disclosure. So perhaps they have data on a certain subset of their company for one set of disclosures and for the full company for another, and also due to changes in between reporting periods. And right now the standards are quite flexible on how this should be handled. There are several disclosures that require a kind of an explanation of any significant changes in the organization, and there is a recommendation to be reporting data for the previous 2 reporting periods, but largely this really is up to companies to determine how they want to handle this on their own. So that's an issue that we wanted to table during the September meeting when we have a longer agenda slot to discuss with the GSSB both the technical queries as well as the results of the monitoring work that Tamara and others in the Standards Division have been carrying out since the March meeting to look at actual reporting practice and to listen to feedback from reporters and GRI's regional offices on how actually the implementation of the standards is going. So I won't ask the GSSB to come to a decision on that point now, but if there are other questions that have come through the technical queries over the last few months that you think also warrant a longer discussion during the September meeting, we would ask that you send those probably to myself and to Lara. just to make sure that we can capture those for the agenda for September. So back to you, Robin, to see if there's any other questions people would like to highlight or identify for discussion at this point.
Yes. Okay. So in the long term for the September meeting, if we were members of the GSSB were able to highlight particular questions arising from this, which require a more lengthy discussion or prioritising for discussion at the September meeting, if they can please email Chelsea and Bastian with those queries. If there is something that is pressing or quite urgent in the view of the GSSB members, if you might raise a point of clarification or a question around one of the technical inquiries that's in the paper now. Not hearing any questions. Is there anyone in the chat function?
No.
No, nothing. That's relatively straightforward. So not hearing anything further, I think we'll finish with that item and start to draw the meeting to a close. Are there any other pressing concerns or comments or questions arising from the agenda today that GSSB members would like to raise?
Sorry, this is Bastian. If there are no other items to be raised, I would like to bring one point to the attention of the GSSB, and that is the fact that this call is the last call in which Chelsea will participate as a formal member of the Standards Division and part of the GRI staff. Chelsea will leave GRI in August, and her last point, of contact with the GSB in her formal role as Deputy Director of the Standards Division is today's call. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Chelsea formally, also in this public meeting, for all her efforts and the remarkable commitment that she has demonstrated over the past 18 months that she has been with us. I think I have mentioned offline to all of you, the GSSB members, that Chelsea's departure is a very significant loss for our standard setting efforts. And it will actually be a challenge to find a new colleague that brings similar levels of expertise, commitment, and certainly also a professional approach to our efforts. So we're really looking at Chelsea's work here, and Chelsea has done an outstanding job over the past 18 months. I hope I have expressed that sufficiently at the various points in time, the milestones of the projects. And we really, well, have to thank her at this stage. I think I want to highlight that Chelsea has been instrumental in making this transition to standards a success. And it is a success, and we continue to actually be able to position GRI in a much better way due to this success. So it has been remarkable to be able to work with her on this, but yeah, it just goes to show that there are big shoes to fill. I would prefer to continue with Chelsea, and so does the team and GI overall, but that's not possible, and we of course understand and respect Chelsea's decision to work closer to family. She will be, well, she is already based in the UK, but now she will also be working in the UK, and I think that makes for a much better work-life balance, and it's a good decision for her, and again, a lot of respect for that. What is left for me is to, again, formally thank her for all her work, but also wish her the best of luck in her next career steps. And I think you all agree with me that we're looking forward to see Chelsea in leadership positions in, well, the wider sustainability and SDG and sustainable development industry. And I have no doubt that we will see her back in assuming a lot of responsibility in our space. So we're looking forward to that and follow that. And thanks again, Chelsea.
Thank you, Bastian.
Here, here. And Bastian, I'd just like to add my thanks on behalf of all of the GSSB members. I know that everybody has had a wonderful experience of working with Chelsea. Fantastic capacity that she's shown during this difficult time in transitioning towards the standards, and her support has been wonderful. We'll miss you a great deal. It's a shame we won't get to see you at our face-to-face meeting, but we do, I'm sure, speaking on behalf of all the GSSB members, we wish you luck with your next chapter, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again in the broader sustainability circle. So once again, thank you so much on behalf of all the GSSB members, Chelsea, and wish you luck, and hope to see you again in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you, Robin.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Bastian. I really don't like goodbyes, and this one has been particularly challenging for me, not only because of the great team that I've been lucky enough to work with at GRI, but also because of the great support and expertise and commitment from you guys on the GSSB. And it has been, I've worked with a number of different boards, and it has been a great privilege to work with you. And I know it has meant a lot for us in the standards team. We've learned a lot. You challenge us, you push back when you need to, and I think that's excellent. It keeps us on our toes. And your support means a lot to the standards team, and it has meant a lot to me over the last year and a half. So I would say thanks to you as well. I will greatly miss the work and the team here, but yes, moving on to new chapters, and I hope to stay in touch with all of you. It's very much a small world in sustainability, and I really do hope and expect that our paths will cross again in all different forms in the future. So yeah, trying not to cry. I'm going to put myself on mute now, Robin, but thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Chelsea, this is Sulema. Thank you very much for everything. I will personally miss you.
Chelsea, it's also Stian, and I just want to thank you for all the hard work and your dedication to the work from the GRI, and wishing you well for your new career. And we hope to stay in touch and see you in future.
Okay. Anyone, if anyone else has some personal reflections for Chelsea, if you have a couple of minutes to add those, or you can send a personal message by email. You're still accessing email for a little while, Chelsea?
Yes, I am for the next. I'm there until 10th of August, so I will kick off the consultation process and then move on. So yes, going to politely request no more public comments. It's quite enough, but very kind.
Thank you. Okay. I think that helps us draw the meeting to a formal close. So thank everyone for their participation and getting speedy approval of the documents for release. That will help with the timeframes a great deal. I'm sure the technical team appreciate the work that the GSSB has done to get this approved in a timely fashion. So thank you everyone for your participation, and I'll formally close the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye all. Thank you.